Today, the topic is centered around the fact that Biden's infrastructure plan, and you guys know by listening to me that I refuse to put the title president before Biden because I don't believe he's there. Never mind the shenanigans that went on in November. But here's what we're faced with right now. His current infrastructure plan is really the Green New Deal. He told the nation that he was basically going to govern as a moderate. He's doing anything but. In fact, I would say that he's more dangerous than Bernie Sanders would have been, because at least Bernie Sanders was honest about where he stood. This isn't the case with Joe Biden. So there are several things that I want to present to you to prove that basically what we have is the new Green Deal. And we should be calling our congressmen, we should be calling our senators. This stuff can't stand. The left, the Democrat Party, which is now on the left. Listen, if you're a Democrat, if you are a liberal, please understand this. This is no longer the Democrat Party. This isn't your grandmother's party. This isn't your grandfather's party. This isn't your aunt and uncle's party. This is a far left-wing radical party now. And unfortunately, they've been able to dumb a lot of people down through the educational system, through academia. So you have a lot of bright people that are book smart that have been brainwashed. And this is why they're able to usher a lot of this stuff through without many voters thinking twice about it. But it's very important. What Biden is attempting to do, not to mention that just the spending alone, we've already had $1.9 trillion worth of spending, and he wants to spend trillions more in a so-called infrastructure package, is going to make more Americans poor. So let's go through this. There are 9 points. This was outlined by the Heritage Foundation, and I want to go through all of them as quickly as possible. And I'll just give you the subtopics, and then we'll go back through them because I want you to be thoroughly informed on the issue. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff happening in the news. There's plenty to talk about, but these are this quote unquote infrastructure plan that's really the Green New Deal, are the things that will fundamentally change America forever. So these are the things that we have to stop. By the way, make sure you tune into my show on Monday evening live 8 to 9, where I will have Armed American Radio Mark Walters on to discuss Biden's latest attack on our Second Amendment civil right. And that is a civil right. So we'll be discussing that Monday. But for now, the Green New Deal. So here are the points. Only less than 5% of the spending that Biden wants to do for this new infrastructure plan is dedicated to roads and bridges. Number two, $2.75 trillion tax hike would stunt our post-pandemic recovery. Big spending won't deliver these jobs that Biden is promising. Fourth subtopic, this is a federal takeover of local responsibilities. Very dangerous. I'll explain why. Number 5, this undercuts businesses by micromanaging our economic development. Number 6, $700 billion in corporate welfare and tax credits. Do you think major corporations right now need $700 billion in corporate welfare and tax benefits? We'll discuss that. $400 billion in welfare and health spending. There's a reason why he wants to shove this inside of a spending bill. Number 8, $165 billion for Amtrak and transit spending, which is absolutely foolish. And I'll explain why that's the case. Number 9, $174 billion in subsidies for electric vehicles, which that subtitle alone or subheading is kind of self-explanatory. So let's go through this. All right. So first off, Democrats keep using this word infrastructure. So when we think of infrastructure, what comes to mind when you hear the word infrastructure? More than likely, it's going to be buildings, it's going to be roads, it's going to be bridges, maybe power plants. But that's not exactly what Biden is talking about. As a matter of fact, $2.25 trillion in total spending is what he wants. And only 90 billion to $100 billion of that will go towards any infrastructure. So whether that be your traditional railroad or whatever, only 5% of that. So where is the other 95% going? This is what the left does. So here's something that's very fundamental you have to keep in mind. And please, I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but there's a lot of people out there that don't realize this. I'd imagine if you listen to my show and shows like mine, then you're not one of those people, but I'm sure you know some people like this. The fact of the matter is the federal government does not have money. They don't produce anything. The only money that they have is the money that they take from you. Even when they print money, essentially they're taking money from you because that causes inflation. It causes the dollar to weaken. And at this point, we're not even borrowing from China or other places. We're just printing money. So your dollar isn't worth as much. So all this idea that a $1,400 stimulus check is really going to help you out and stuff like that. I've told you this before, but even that $1,400 stimulus check over time, basically you're going to pay back anywhere from 14 grand to 17 grand in inflation and rising costs just to pay back that $1,400. So you didn't get a stimulus check. You got a welfare check that the Democrats want, where they want to keep you dependent. And I know some of you out there listening may be Democrats. I'm not trying to insult you. I love all people. I don't like everybody, but I love all people. And I know there are some good, warm-hearted Democrats that really believe this stuff is helping the country. It isn't. It is hurting us. And ultimately, it's going to hurt you. So this is a bait and switch. We saw it with the COVID-19 package. Again, there, $1.9 trillion. And you know what's so frustrating? I'm just shooting out the word trillion. I have no concept of trillion. I mean, seriously, that is such a huge number. I don't even have any concept of that. You know, J-Dog is in studio, Dennis in studio. I was thinking about this, and I can't even remember when I looked this up. But at some point I looked up, I can't even remember. I think it was 1 trillion, and it was like dollar bills stacked to the moon, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it was something ridiculous. You guys will have to double check me on that, but it was something absolutely ridiculous just to conceptualize how far $1 trillion would go. Maybe I'm wrong on that. That seems a little far, but it was whatever it was just absolutely crazy. But it's hard to even conceptualize that. And we used to talk about billions, and we were in debt billions and billions of dollars. And now we're just going into the trillions like it's nothing. This is absolutely crazy. What we're looking at is the Green New Deal. This isn't about infrastructure spending. This is about fundamentally changing our economy so that Democrats, and let me say this, so that leftists that exist within the Democrat Party have total and full control of the economy for as far and as long as we all can see. The reason why they want you more dependent upon healthcare, the reason why they want you more dependent on government healthcare, I should say, the reason why they want you more dependent upon Green New Deal type stuff, climate change, global warming, man-made stuff, because if you're constantly in fear, basically it gives them the permission they need to grow the size of the government. And if you're talking about the growth in government, who are you going to elect? You're always going to elect Democrats. They know this. This is fundamental. So the goal is to make them more powerful and to make you weaker. So it'll no longer be a government that's for and by the people, but it'll be a government for the powerful. And we will simply be the peons. We will not have a say any longer in what happens, what transpires with our federal government. Let's go to the next point. A 2.7 trillion tax hike in post-pandemic economic recovery. So Biden wants to implement the largest tax hike on corporations since LBJ. Now, some of you may think, good, screw those big corporations. And I got to be honest with you, to some extent, I'm starting to agree with that when we see all these corporations that are bowing down to the woke wing of the Democrat Party. I really don't necessarily care that they get taxed more, except for this. It's not going to hurt them. It's going to hurt us. That's the way it works. Anybody with a corporation, anyone with a small business understands when products go up, when costs go up, you still have to make a living. You still have to eat. You still have to feed your family. You still have to pay your bills. So what do? You pass on those costs to your customer, to the consumer, because you have no choice. So yeah, all right. So we're punishing corporate. What is that? I mean, maybe more corporations go overseas. I don't. But ultimately, it's not gonna hurt. It's not gonna hurt the major corporations, the Nikes, the Coca-Colas. By the way, don't buy any Coca-Cola products. Delta Airlines, stay away from them. United Airlines, stay away from them. All of these woke people that are starting to show up. I hope their businesses collapse, quite frankly, because all they're doing is participating in just corruption and division of the United States. But having said that, ultimately, when you raise taxes on corporations, it's just silly. I believe there should be a flat tax. I believe there should be a flat tax for corporations, individuals. God wants 10%. I don't see why the government can't live on that. And this will force more people to be mindful of their money. It'll help people have more money, and we have to do a better job in our junior highs and high schools, teaching people about the concepts of saving and investing money, so on, etc. That will be more helpful. All right. So also, the combination of state and federal taxes will put us at a major disadvantage. So Biden wants to increase federal taxes and state taxes, basically, because they want to implement all of this stuff within the states. So that is the federal government kind of taking over state level stuff, which I'll get into that. But that puts us at a disadvantage. Look at China. See, this is why we shouldn't have hired, and I don't believe we did, but some people hired Biden to run the White House, which, from what I understand, he can only exist for a couple hours in a day mentally. But this was a guy that was in bed with China, our biggest major competitor, that are walking all over us right now. You saw how they manhandled Blinken in Alaska in the first meeting that they had. Just straight up ate our lunch. Used left-wing propaganda against Biden's administration, and they took it like a champ. Now, some of you may not care and understand how dangerous it is for China to exist in a space that's more powerful than the United States, but they're communists. And it's sad, but a lot of people don't understand what that means. I mean, they are total totalitarian. Their people have no say in what their government does. As a matter of fact, in China, I'm not sure if you know this, they demand that you own a phone so they can keep a hold of you. They can keep track of you. Wherever you go in different places of China, you're on camera. There's no such thing as privacy. They control your life. And ultimately, this is where we're going to get to with the left. For some reason, these woke people on the left want to bring America down to size, but it's really immature, it's childish. It shows that a lot of these people, even in academia, really don't know our history, don't understand history, or don't contextualize history properly. The fact of the matter is America is the greatest nation that God has ever given man, and we're throwing it away because it's too good. We've become very lazy. We've become spoiled brats. And so we talk about our past 150, 200 years ago, when some nations around the world, including our global competitor in China, that literally still has slave labor. Parts of Africa that still have slave labor. As a matter of fact, there's a genocide going on in China with Muslim Uyghurs. And you have people like LeBron James and all these NBA players and all these woke sports figures rocking Nike shoes. I have Nike shoes because I bought them in the past. I haven't bought Nike shoes in years, and I will never buy Nike again. This is stuff that we have to do. We just have to start standing up. But all this tax hike, yeah, it's going to stunt the growth. It's going to stunt the growth of our economy. Corporations that are smart, they aren't going to invest in much or as much, and it's ultimately going to hurt us. Listen to this. It'll take 15 years of taxes, you and I, paying the government for 8 years of Biden's spending. So that's everyone in the labor force, over 160 something odd million people that are in the labor force, 16 and above. It's going to take 8 years to pay for Biden's spending. I mean, 15 years to pay for 8 years of Biden's spending. Were he to be in office for 2 years, I'm not even convinced he'll be in 8 months. I don't think he's mentally capable. Maybe they'll keep him in and will him out on occasion, but the guy is on the downturn pretty quickly. But think about that. So how will we ever pay this back? How will the dollar ever become strong? It won't be. If it takes 15 years to pay off 8 years of debt, well, another president is going to come in. Another Congress is going to come in. They're going to have their agenda. They're going to want to do their spending. So imposing tax hikes on Americans while we're still recovering from these lockdowns, and I say lockdowns, not COVID-19, because we all know, or we should know by now, it was really stupid to lock down our economies for so long, period. We shouldn't have done it in the first place, quite frankly. I do think that was a mistake on President Trump's part, listening to Dr. Fauci. That's just something I would have never done. You don't shut down an economy. You figure this stuff out. And supposedly, if masks really work, then there should be no fear, right? And if these masks keep us safe, if social distancing keeps us safe, then why should the economy ever be closed down? So this was the whole COVID-19 thing. All of this, I'm not saying that it's not serious. Obviously, people have died from this. A lot of people have gotten, died from COVID-19. Many have gotten sick and gravely sick in some cases. But right now, there's a 99.7 survivability rate. The flu is 99.8%. Why we would close down the economy is absolutely ridiculous. And why would Democrats keep their? You notice a lot of these lockdowns, and they're starting to open it up because there's so much pressure, like Gavin Newsom in California. But the purpose of the lockdowns is to keep you weak while the government gets strong, while major corporations, these donors to the Democrat Party is now the party of big corporation, of major corporations. The mom and pop shops, they're screwing. Why are they screwing the mom and pop shops? Because that's the middle class. That's the working class. That's the middle class is what the left has to destroy in order to have total power. They can have the poor class. They can have the indigent class or the lower class because they expect that the lower class will always be dependent some way, shape, or form on the federal government. The middle class, however, is different. The middle class, you can transition to both. You can have a bad year or two and become poor, but you can also have great years of work, saving, and investing, and you can get into the upper class. And then you want to be able to control your money more. You probably start paying attention to your money more. So the middle class is very dangerous. A free-thinking middle class is very dangerous for the Democratic left, and they know it, so they want to crush us. And that's what they're doing. So think about this. When Trump and the GOP, when they cut the corporate tax rate in 2017, and now I wish they hadn't done it for Nike in some of these places, but I wish there were some you can pick and choose, like people that are anti-American. You have companies in China running business. I feel like you should be taxed more now. I didn't always feel that way, but in general, so I'm speaking in general, but just keep in mind when Trump and the GOP cut taxes. Now, what does that mean, cut taxes? We have to start talking about this stuff practically. When Trump and the GOP cut taxes, they essentially said, hey, the only way government makes money is by taking money from you. So we're just going to take less money from you. You keep your money. You keep your money. You do what you want to do with your money. You know what happened when he cut taxes in corporations? You guys may remember this. wages went up. Corporations were like, hey, okay, we don't have to pay as much in taxes. We'll pay our employees more. You guys may remember that some corporations were like, hey, we're giving our employees $1,000 bonus. And Nancy Pelosi was like, $1,000 bonus. Oh, that's just crumbs. And now she's down to give people $1,400. Well, Nancy, isn't that a crumb? I mean, but it was just corporations able to keep more money in their pockets, giving back to their workers who were helping their corporations. But Nancy Pelosi, when the government says they're going to give you a stimulus, it's not a stimulus, especially when they say, hey, taxpayer, let me take $1,400 from you with inflation, $14,000, $17,000, and then I'll give it back to you, and then you can give me the praise. It's really sick, but a lot of people don't understand how this works. You even got Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, I believe he is. Yeah, West Virginia, that's saying, hey, I don't know about this corporate tax. It's a little, this tax hike, this is a little too high. So he wants to meet somewhere in the middle, which I think is idiotic too. But nonetheless, at least you got some Democrats, and I'm guessing there's more than him, that are saying, this may be a little too far. It may be a little too far. So he inherently gets it. And then the third point, big spending won't deliver promised job creation. When the government spends money, again, they're taking money out of the economy. So how is this going to produce more jobs? Remember President Obama's shovel-ready jobs? How can a guy sitting in the White House know what's going to happen to over 160 something million people in the workforce? You can't. So what you do is empower their bosses to have more money in their hands so they can do more, like the tax cuts. I mean, so it's not gonna, we're not gonna create millions of jobs. This is what Biden says will happen with this infrastructure plan. But infrastructure, according to the Heritage Foundation, infrastructure spending has a poor track record of increasing employment. So federally funded projects are slowed by red tape. So a lot of red tape, a lot of regulation. Think about this. Actually, let me make this point, and then I'll get back to and the third point within this subtopic or subhead is often these infrastructure spending serves to divert skilled workers from private sector construction work. So going back, infrastructure spending has a poor track record. Second thing, federally funded projects are slowed by red tape. So think about the vaccines. You guys, I heard this stat the other day. So we've been, states have been, I live in the state of Florida, but states have been giving the vaccine as readily as they can get them, and as readily as people are willing to go and take the COVID vaccine, whichever one you choose. I really don't care. But nonetheless, the states have been getting it done. I mean, at a rate of, I haven't looked at it lately, but I mean, it was like over 1 million vaccines per day. And this was even happening under Trump. So it isn't like Biden is doing anything spectacular. He's doing exactly what Trump would have been doing. And I would guess Trump would be doing much better, given the fact that he's the one that even encouraged these pharmaceutical companies to get this stuff done, and all the testing and all that kind of stuff. So the vaccines, when Biden came into office, his administration, whoever is working behind the scenes, because we know it isn't Biden, they said, we're going to open up these federal places, if you will, where people can go and get the vaccine shots. All right. So now, with the states' help and the states doing their own thing, you got 1 point something million per day. Since Biden has opened up these locales where you can get the vaccine, federal locales across different states, you know how much they've done since he's been in office? Now, again, over 1 million per day in the private sector, just working with states, local governments, people getting stuff done, like Ron DeSantis and Governor Ron DeSantis going through Publix, CVS, all these kind of things, private sector getting stuff done. Biden's vaccine places, stops, whatever, I think it was 75 million in the last couple of months. The government is ineffective because you have a bunch of people that don't know what the heck they're doing saying, okay, how do we make this work? Okay, what are the regulations? What are the rules? What are this? Whereas the private sector is like, okay, we know what to do. Let's get this done. It always slows growth. Again, just go back to Obama's shovel-ready jobs, which there were never any shovel-ready jobs. Obama even admitted he got that wrong. So there is no need for more stimulus either while the economy opens back up. If the economy is slowly opening back up, what you need is for people to feel free to go open their own businesses and rebuild businesses that took a hit as a result of the lockdowns, not COVID, but as a result of these imposed lockdowns, which are totally unconstitutional. And it's honestly, I'm just shocked at how many of us Americans sat by and allowed this crap to happen. And even people that are Democrats, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I would have never thought in a million years so many Americans would have just laid down, but it just proves that we're not necessarily America anymore. We are in decline. Okay, so the federal takeover of local responsibilities. This is really important. This is what Biden's Green New Deal will do, and that's what it is. It is the Green New Deal. All right, so according to the Heritage Foundation, much of the infrastructure spending in the Biden plan would go toward purely local projects. This includes $100 billion for school construction. Yeah. So all these teachers, So $100 billion for school. Have you guys seen schools lately? I mean, I remember going to school back in the late 80s, mid 90s. And I mean, it was like portables and it was decent buildings, but it was like just clear that you were going to school. I drove up to some schools here locally. I'm like, what the heck? These schools are so outrageously expensive. Even on a local level, I feel like I'm driving up to some, major federal museum, or I mean, it's crazy how much spend. I don't even have the words. I mean, I literally went to I remember a graduation I went to a few years ago, high school graduation for, I think, one of my daughter's friends or some type of. Just walking through the school, I was like, this is a high school? I mean, it looked like a university. I mean, this is and our students are dumber than ever. Maybe book smart, but I mean, they're being taught stuff that just isn't relevant for life. So, but $100 billion for school construction, $100 billion for water lines, $20 billion for pedestrian safety. I mean, this is crazy. This is a federal takeover. This is what people fundamentally don't get. And the problem is we watch too much news, and I'm guilty of it myself. But I happen to know the difference. I hope many of you do as well. We watch so much news that's national news. It's nationally based. Maybe it's Fox News, maybe it's CNN, maybe it's NBC, whatever it may be. And we just tend to think about the federal government. And so we have no problem when the federal government reach their claws into local municipalities, state governments, but it should not be that way. If the federal government gets strong, then eventually we become like China, where everything is ruled from one person on high. So let's say you hate Trump. Okay, would you want Trump? You got to stop thinking partisanship here. This is liberty or tyranny. You have to think in terms of, does the government grow more powerful or do I? Regardless of your party. So if the government grows more powerful, it's never good for you as an individual, because eventually the government that gives you your rights can take away your rights. That's why we live in a great country, because we have the Bill of Rights that we believe are ordained by God himself. So once you start messing with those things, once the federal government starts encroaching into local municipalities, local governments, we're in trouble. And this is exactly what they're trying to do. So yeah, we'll give your mayor, we'll give your governor, we'll give them this money, but then that makes our state, our local municipalities beholden. to the federal government. Also, let me make sure. Let me just reiterate what heading I'm in, because I get lost sometimes myself. All right. So federal takeover or local responsibilities is what we're talking about. All right. So the second thing you have to be concerned about is it subsidizes local governments that may have shirked their core duties at the expense of areas that are governed responsibly. So, for instance, look at what's happened with the pandemic. Look at New York, California. All of these states ran by Democrats that ran their states and their economies into the ground. So people in those states elected their governors, elected their local politicians to do good things. They overspent the money. They had no money left. And so Joe Biden rewards them. How crazy is that? So states like Florida, where Ron DeSantis, our governor, ran the state well, we get penalized, but states that did a bad job, governors that did a bad job, get rewarded. This is crazy. Also, the plan would mean these local projects are subject to reams of cost increasing federal regulations. So anything the federal government does, they add regulations to, that means costs will rise. Fourth, it will crowd out private sector solutions. This is another reason why we don't want the federal government involved in local municipalities or state municipalities. You just stop thinking. You really stop thinking. Entrepreneurs or people that would be entrepreneurs, just stop thinking. When you become dependent on the federal government, there's just not a whole lot of thinking going on, because you don't have to be innovative. That's why America is such a good idea. 5,000 years, the world just remained stagnant. You got to read this book, 5,000 Year Leap. It's amazing. I keep it as a reference book. But if you look at what happened, the world remained stagnant. Everybody was into slavery. Everybody was there was no innovation going on. The same tools that were used 5,000 years prior were still being used in some form or shape or another, maybe slightly more modern 5,000 years later. What happens? America comes on the scene, innovation happens, and men just start thinking, oh, okay, we don't have to do this. We don't have to do this way. What if I made this more efficient? What if I made this more efficient? That's how it happened. I mean, that's why America became the envy of the world in such a short period of time. All right, the fifth thing that happens with this Green New Deal, it undercuts business by micromanaging economic development. Areas of the country that are led by you and I would simply be undermined, just based on some of the things that I just said. You lose innovation, you lose growth. This is just crazy. Let me read this part. By spending hundreds of billions of dollars on normally private initiatives like research and development, broadband access, the electric grid, housing development, the plan would socialize these activities on a massive scale. So anybody that has good ideas, that will help grow the economy, you get government. Do you guys really think that Joe Biden, even when he was in his right mind, he was still dumb as a box of rocks? Do you really believe Joe Biden could come in and tell people that are entrepreneurial, is that a word? Entrepreneurs, or people that are innovation minded or whatever. Do you think he was capable? Somebody that's been in government for 50 years and hasn't had to do it. Hasn't had to do anything, hasn't had to create anything, hasn't had to govern. He's getting his first opportunity to govern, and he's an absolute disaster. Do you think this man, 50 years where people were kissing his butt, 50 years where he doesn't have to earn a paycheck, 50 years of corruption? This guy is a multimillionaire over and over and over again. How? He hasn't created anything. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. Do you think he can tell business owners and entrepreneurs things that they can do better? Of course he can. Same thing with Obama. Becomes a professor, a lawyer, a professor, and then all of a sudden he's great at entrepreneurship. Really? I mean, this is idiotic, but we buy into this because they get us to fight as parties instead of us thinking, okay, who's giving us more power? Who's taking away our power? as people, as we the people. $700 billion in corporate welfare and tax credit is the 6th point. So Biden essentially will hook up more of his homies. Let me read this. The broad corporate tax hike would necessarily shrink the private sector relative to what it would be otherwise. So in a classic take with one hand, give with the other maneuver, the spending plan or the Green New Deal would shower hundreds of billions of dollars on favored sectors, including green energy, politically selected manufacturing, and thinly disguised slush funds. You guys remember Solyndra during the Obama scandal? It wasn't just Solyndra. It was, for some reason, that name sticks out. But there were several green corporations that President Obama gave money to. I mean, billions and billions and billions of dollars to these corporations, these green corporations, and they crashed. They got drunk off of being rich real quick because they could stop innovating. No one wanted their stuff. And by the way, all these, what are those solar panels are made in China, by the way, so you shouldn't be getting solar panels. I mean, I'm sure there's some American companies that find an American company if they make, but the vast majority are made in China. But Solyndra, they blew the money within a year and they were out of business or virtually bankrupt. I can't remember which one, but it was a total disaster. And he did this over and over and over again, hooked up his homies, and none of it worked. Why? Because people don't want green stuff. People aren't stupid. We know the world isn't going to collapse in a year or 10 years or 11 years like they constantly predict. I'm 43 years old. I've been hearing this crap since I was like 5 years old, growing up in Los Angeles. You heard this all the time. The world's going to end in 5 years. The world's going to end in 10 years. Here we are 40 years later, and the numbers are actually better. The environment is actually better, and they're still plotting out the same lies because all they want to do is make people fear them. But this idea of giving corporate, we don't need corporate welfare. These major corporations, look at Amazon. Look at how much money Jeff Bezos doubled his net worth. This entire time Amazon has been open for decades and running for decades. In 9 months or less during the lockdowns, he doubled his net worth. In 9 months. I mean, this is these guys don't need welfare. What the middle class needs is these lockdowns to stop so they can go back to work. Corporations don't need welfare. They don't need credit. 7th point, $400 billion in welfare and health spending. Why? Infrastructure, typically, we're talking about roads, bridges, power plants, maybe some buildings. Infrastructure is never meant for Medicaid or welfare. That's never been done before. So there's a separate within the bill, within the Green New Deal, Biden wants $400 billion for Medicaid, childcare, veterans hospitals. Now you say veterans hospitals, but I was listening to how much money veterans hospitals are getting just for paintings on their wall. Like, I mean, the numbers are outrageous. There were numbers as high as $90 million that the Veterans Administration is spending for art. How about we just spend that on Medicare for veterans? I mean, this is stupid. That's why when the government has so much money, they just waste it. They just waste it. So $400 million in Medicaid, childcare, veterans hospitals, public housing, all of this, if you're going to do it, they should have a bill of their own. If congressmen and women can't produce, by the way, a bill that they can't read for themselves within an hour or two, the bill shouldn't even exist, in my opinion. Have all of these bills separate. Let people vote yes or no so we can know where they stand. Do they want to destroy the country or not? 8th point, wasteful $165 billion handout for transit and Amtrak. Okay, so this really frustrates me. So Biden's Green New Deal would spend nearly 50% more on trains and buses. Listen to this. This is crazy. I don't know how I highlighted this, and I guess I had a brain fart, but Biden's plan would spend 50% more on trains and buses than on roads. What? How stupid is that? I wonder if they're going to put record players on the trains and buses. As remember, he said that during the debates. 50% more on trains and buses. Now, this is idiotic. So this is despite the fact that transit agencies have received, listen to these 4 facts, real quick bites here. Transit agencies have received far more money from COVID-19 legislation than they lost during the pandemic. So no one's riding public transportation, this and that. The government just subsidizes them. Also, despite transit and Amtrak already being heavily subsidized, despite telework. So these transit, Amtrak, these type of places, they're heavily subsidized. Not enough people ride them. No one wants to ride on a train. If you have a car, I mean, that's part of wanting to own your own car. The freedom that a vehicle brings you. That's another reason why they want to move us to mass transportation. Honestly, it's a psychological thing. It's like, get these Americans away from this concept of freedom, their own cars, driving by themselves, going wherever the heck they want to go. No, let's make them dependent even on transportation. This is exactly what the left does. And this is, now we have a different way to commute and travel. People are using Zoom. There's no need for any of this stuff. So there's only one region in the world where this would make sense. My dog walks into the screen. So there's only one region in the world where this would make sense, or one region in America, and that's New York. The Heritage Foundation says the latest attempt to coax people into Amtrak and mass transit ignores fundamental facts about geography and density. America has one especially dense metro area, and that's New York City, and one region where city-to-city rail is financially sustainable, and that's Boston to Washington. So other than New York or Boston to Washington, none of this spending makes sense, and yet Biden wants to basically hook up his homies and spend $165 billion. So transportation won't get any bigger. These trains, as a matter of fact, they built a metro rail in California that even Gavin Newsom ended when he got into office. Even he, and he's as dense as a light bulb, dense as a bad light bulb, or it's dim, I should say. Yeah, it's dim. I don't know. Now I look dense. All right, even he stopped the Metro train in California. Here's a quick story on that. I remember when this Metro train, or whatever it was called, I've been out of California a long time, first opened up. So I rode it within the first week, and it was packed. I mean, people all over the place. People so excited. Oh man, you can go from, I got on it in Long Beach, California, a city within LA County. And then I would ride it to my brother and sister-in-law's place in Moreno Valley. So Riverside County, California. And it was, I don't know, an hour or so on the rail. And it was kind of a nice, cool drive, or a cool ride, I should say. But initially, first week, it was packed. I got on that thing. It couldn't have been a month later. I was one of like 6 or 7 people on the entire train. So everybody was, oh, cool, pretty Metro train. California is wide. You have to do a lot of driving to go certain places. What's cool about California, you can go to the mountains, the beach, the desert, anywhere you want. Geographically speaking, within an hour or so, or about an hour or so. Nobody wanted to ride the rail. It was just fascinating at first. So, and think about this, as far as transit workers are concerned, current subsidies have already led to drop in compensation, according to the Heritage Foundation, for urban transit workers who are political constituency for the left. Increasing the subsidies would increase the already excessive payout. So you get guys that work on Amtrak, and I knew one, and they ended up hating me. They were my neighbors. I won't name any names, but maybe they're watching me, but right now. But honestly, I'm just sick of I'm sick of this. This is crazy. This person worked for Amtrak for 20 years, started at a young age, set for the rest of his life. I remember I used to like, oh my God, and good guy, nice guy. I'm not mad. I'm not mad, but it is frustrating that if you don't, getting a government job shouldn't be like winning the lottery. I'm sorry, that's crazy, especially when people are paying your salary. And I know people don't look at it like that when they work for government because they're just doing their job, and I get it. But the truth of the matter is that's what politicians should be looking out for, and they're not. But I'm sorry, you shouldn't be able to work a 20-year job for the government, make double what anyone in the private sector who is paying your salary makes, and then get a cush retirement for the rest of your life. If you invest on your own and save on your own, good for you. But there should not be there shouldn't be full pensions. If I ever run for office, that's going to get me in trouble. They're going to play that back.
Yeah, we have you recording.
Great. Now I won't run for office ever. There should not be full pensions for government workers. I'm sorry. Give them a great package that they can invest in, which they do. And that's it. That's it. Just like every other American. Last thing I want to mention, $174 billion in subsidies for electric vehicles. You know why? Because no one wants them. Yeah, sure. There's a few people you see riding Teslas and stuff like that. But Tesla couldn't even get off the ground without major government funding. Because of the fact of the matter is, I mean, to me, Teslas are ugly as heck. I don't get it. But I hear they're amazingly fast. So I'm sure I would love that aspect of them because I love the traditional Americana or whatever. I have no problem with people owning Tesla, Priuses, electric cars. Hey, you do you, boo. All right. I'm cool with that. What I'm not cool with is having to bust my butt and help you pay for it. That isn't right. That simply isn't right. And this notion that electric cars are going to save America. No, actually, and I actually like Elon Musk. Who doesn't like Elon Musk? But electric cars actually do more damage to the environment than the average fossil fuel driving, gasoline guzzling car does in its entire life on the road, in just the production. So once you have a Tesla or any electric vehicle that's made, okay, you're not putting out, a bunch of carbon emissions, granted. But with the lithium that they use in the batteries, you destroy one car being built. Just in the development, you do more damage to the environment than you do if you buy a gas guzzling truck and you run it on the road for 7 or 8 years.
So go get your Hummer.
Yeah, basically, this is about control. Man-made. This is about control. And sadly, we've got an entire generation of kids that have been brought up scared, thinking the sky is going to fall on them when it's not, and they're buying into this stuff. But what we have here is the Green New Deal. Nothing less than that. Every one of you, I want you, in closing here, every one of you, I want you to call your congressman. I want you to call your senators. We have just spent $1.9 trillion in quote unquote COVID relief, and only 10% of that $1.9 trillion went to anything health-wise related to COVID. The rest were giveaways to states that did a horrible job running their states and to Biden's homies. Don't let this happen again. This is a way to exact control over you, the people. It's nothing more than that. We pay for this. Biden doesn't have money. Well, Biden has a lot of money now because he's corrupt as all get out. But Biden, as the leader of the nation, does not have money to just give away. He's taking it from you. It's time for us to tell them to stop. So unless there's any questions.
Oh, what we have now is the comment section.
Okay, so give me a couple of comments and then we'll shut this.
We have some good comments. You know what? We really need like a buffer, like a little transition music here. I was thinking of doing it myself, but people don't want to hear me sing. Hey,
what would it be if you did it?
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, the comment section. See, nobody wants
that.
To
Actually
do that.
Wasn't too bad.
Can you use some of your government cheese money to buy us a jingle package so people don't have to hear me do that?
You know what's funny is I have not got my government cheese. I got the first stimulus with Trump, but I think they know I was a Trump voter, so I haven't got that 600 or 14. I have never seen. I've never seen that.
Biden ain't gonna send you.
Anyway.
Okay, a couple comments. Bobby and Tracy want to say thank you for your transparency and also for describing basic economics. Bobby says most people will never understand this. Barbara has been very chatty. We love Barbara and her comments. She says, We have allowed the feds way more power than what was intended. I believe the way out of this thing is for liberty-minded governors coupled with state legislators and we the people to coalition and assert state sovereignty.
And I think I think it's going to be more dependent on the latter, Barbara. It's going to be we the people. It's really time for us to stand up. These people are supposed to work for us. I'm not even sure if many conservatives understand or believe that anymore, but it's time. Otherwise, America is going to end. Any more?
Yeah, Paula kind of re-quoted kind of what we've been saying is that the middle class is who the government wants to destroy. And Barbara has a question. She wonders what DeSantis I wonder what DeSantis wants to do. Some are saying he should be president, but why are we in the business of building the career of a politician? We need people like him to lead states.
We do need people like him to lead states. But I will say this. Obviously, everyone gets giddy when they see real fighters in office. This guy now has a track record. And going into 2024, you're going to need someone like him or someone like Trump. I personally believe that DeSantis is a better rendition of Trump. I believe he has the fight that Trump has. But he's better at communicating. Now, Trump has still a backbone, so I would vote for him again in a heartbeat, just because of his courage. But if Trump gets back in, he's going to have to put better people around him. There's a couple of more people that I really like. Mike Pompeo. I know he's a sleeper. He's kind of dull, but Mike Pompeo in the White House, I'd be totally okay with that. Be totally okay with Ted Cruz. Again, this all goes back to the people, but I think people get excited. You're right. We need people like that in the States. But the fact of the matter is, like I was explaining at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of people, even on news channels, looks to the federal government. And so sadly, instead of power rising from the top, power now is at the top, concentrated at the top. So we need someone at the top that's willing to say, I'm going to give power back to the people. Mm-hmm. So that's why people get excited for a person like Ron DeSantis.
And I have no problem with Ron DeSantis moving up from state legislature or to be governor to running for president.
Yeah.
As long as we replace DeSantis with someone who's like him or Trump-ish. So we're not replacing him with someone weaker into that position of leadership.
Now, that is the scary thing, because it's a bet you have to it's a bet, because a lot of people talk a good game and they get in and they don't do much, or they veer to the left. Like, I was impressed with Rick Scott until he kind of walked on the Second Amendment, and I was like, I am not putting someone that walks on the Second Amendment in the White House. So I know he was good in virtually every other way, straightforward. Kind of like Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis is a little better, but once you trample on any one of the Bill of Rights, I am not putting you in the White House. Just won't happen, Captain. All right. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you tuning in this week. And I really wanted to just dive into this. I know this isn't necessarily a sexy topic, but this is really important. If Biden gets this Green New Deal passed, and we say this all the time, sadly, but this is true. I don't see how you turn back. I mean, you've already got a generation of kids that thinks the sky is falling. When you get everyone else dependent on green energy, this Green New Deal, which is all it is, it's going to be very difficult to turn back. So we just can't let it happen. We just can't let it happen. We're going to be more important than governors and all that stuff right now. Our voice needs to be heard. So continue to call your congressmen, your senators. That stuff makes a difference. Let them feel the heat. All of these woke corporations that buy into this stuff, Coca-Cola, whomever, all that MLB stuff that went on. I'm not watching. I love baseball. I was like, I think a year or two ago, I was saying, screw every other sport. I'm just going to watch baseball. I'm not even a big golf fan, but I'm going to start watching the Masters.
Yeah. And then baseball had to go and pull out the All-Star game from Georgia.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, we can go. Yeah.
I've talked about that some. There are actually 7 blue states that have stricter voting laws than Georgia. But anyway, topic for another day. I'll probably get into that next week again, just so you know a little more information. But I think this is what I'm going to be doing from now on, a little or more of anyway in the future. I used to do this, just focus on a topic. There's tons of news out there. I get it, but you guys can search for that. But I want you to be able to be very knowledgeable on certain issues, and this is one you should be. So Biden's Green New Deal, this is what his infrastructure planning spending is. Something he said he was against, something he said he wouldn't do. He's lied to everyone. I knew it. I'm sure you knew it. Now, hopefully, more people know it. All right, guys, until next week, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless every single one of you.